Welcome to English Mindcast. Let's take a deep breath together. Are you ready for a story? Today, we are going to travel far away. We are traveling to the middle of the ocean to uncover one of the greatest mysteries of the human world. My friends, imagine you are standing on a small piece of land. All around you, in every direction, there is nothing but the deep blue ocean. The wind is blowing hard. It pulls at your clothes and whispers in your ears. It is a lonely wind. You look around the landscape, but you do not see a single forest. You do not see any tall green trees swaying in the breeze. Instead, you see short, dry grass covering the hills. The land feels very empty. It feels incredibly quiet. This place is called Easter Island, or as the local people call it, Rapa Nui. It is the most isolated inhabited island on Earth. Isolated means it is completely alone. It is thousands of miles away from any other country or continent. It is a tiny speck of land lost in the massive Pacific Ocean. But as you walk across the dry grass, you realize something shocking. You are not alone. Standing in front of you are giants. They are huge, heavy faces carved out of dark volcanic stone. Some of these stone giants are as tall as a 3-story building. They have deep, dark eyes. They have long, straight noses and very strong jaws. They stand in long lines along the edge of the island. Their backs are turned to the ocean, and they are looking inward at the empty hills. Who are these giants? Why are they here in the middle of nowhere? They do not speak. They cannot tell us their secrets. They just stand in the eerie, spooky silence of the island. These stone giants are called the Moai. There are almost 1,000 of them scattered across the island. Some are standing tall, others are lying broken on the ground. Some are half buried in the dirt. When people from the modern world first saw these statues, they were completely confused. It was a giant puzzle. How did these massive stone faces get here? Who carved them? The people who lived on the island had no big machines. They had no wheels. They had no metal tools. So how did they do it? And more importantly, what happened to the great civilization that built them? Where did they all go? Today, my friends, we will solve this mystery together. To understand the end of the story, we must go back to the very beginning. Long before the stone giants existed, the ocean was quiet. Think about the Pacific Ocean. It is huge. It is dangerous. Now, imagine crossing it without a modern ship, without an engine, and without a map. More than 1,000 years ago, a group of brave explorers did exactly that. These were the Polynesian people. They were some of the greatest sailors in human history. They did not have modern technology. Instead, they read the stars in the night sky. They watched the birds flying above the water. They felt the changes in the ocean waves. They packed their families, their food, and their animals into small wooden canoes. A canoe is a long, narrow boat. These boats were open to the rain and the sun. It was an impossible journey. They sailed for weeks, maybe months, across the endless water. They were looking for a new home. They were looking for a safe place to live. Finally, after a long and terrifying journey, they saw a miracle. They saw a beautiful green mountain rising out of the blue water. They had found Rapa Nui. When these first explorers stepped onto the beach, they fell to their knees in joy. They had not found a dry, empty island. They had found a true paradise. At that time, Rapa Nui was covered in thick, beautiful forests. There were millions of tall palm trees. The air was filled with the songs of a huge variety of seabirds. The soil was dark and rich, perfect for growing food. The ocean around the island was filled with big fish and dolphins. For the tired sailors, this was a dream come true. They had wood to build new houses and warm fires. They had plenty of food to eat. They had fresh water to drink. They believed the gods had guided them to this perfect, safe place. They settled down, built their villages, and began to raise their families. Life was incredibly good. Years passed, and the small group of explorers grew into a large, healthy society. The island provided everything they needed. The people of Rapa Nui were safe, full, and happy. Because survival was easy, they had free time. They did not have to spend every minute looking for food. This free time allowed their culture to blossom. It was a golden age of peace and prosperity. The people of Rapa Nui were deeply religious. They believed strongly in their ancestors, their grandfathers and great-grandfathers who had died. They believed these ancestors watched over them and protected them from harm. They believed their ancestors had a special magical power called mana. To honor these powerful ancestors, the people decided to create something permanent. They went to the center of the island, to an extinct volcano called Rano Raraku. The rock inside this volcano was perfect for carving. Using only simple tools made of harder stone, the men began to carve. They worked together, chipping away at the rock day after day. Slowly, a giant face would appear from the stone wall of the volcano. These were the first moai. Creating a single moai took months, sometimes even a year, of hard, sweaty work. But it was not a chore. It was an act of deep faith and love. When a moai was finished, it was a beautiful piece of art. The people believed that when the statue was placed in their village, the spirit of their ancestor would enter the stone. The stone giant would look over the village and keep the people safe. During this golden age, the sounds of carving filled the air. You could hear the constant tap, tap, tap of stone hitting stone. The villages shared their food with the carvers. Everyone worked together as one big, happy family. The island was alive with purpose and community. The moai were symbols of their success and their connection to the divine. Carving the statues was an amazing achievement, but it was only the first part of the puzzle. Once a giant moai was finished at the volcano, it had to be moved. The villages were located on the edges of the island, near the ocean. The volcano was in the center. The distance between the volcano and the villages was many miles over rough, rocky ground. Some of these stone statues weighed as much as 80 tons. That is the same weight as about a dozen large elephants. How do you move something that heavy without wheels, without cranes, and without large animals like horses or oxen? For a long time, modern scientists could not figure it out. It seemed like an impossible magic trick. When early explorers asked the local people how the statues moved, the answer was always the same. The locals smiled and said, "The statues walked." For years, people thought this was just a silly legend or a fairy tale. But my friends, the legend was true. Scientists and archaeologists finally discovered the secret. The people of Rapa Nui were genius engineers. They tied thick, strong ropes around the head of the heavy statue. They placed groups of strong men on the left side, the right side, and the back. By pulling the ropes in a careful rhythm, left, right, left, right, they made the giant stone statue rock back and forth. Slowly, inch by inch, the statue waddled forward. It moved just like a tall refrigerator moves when you push it across the kitchen floor. To anyone watching from a distance, it truly looked like the stone giant was walking on its own across the hills. It took incredible teamwork, perfect timing, and loud singing to keep the rhythm. Moving a moai was a massive community event. It showed the brilliant minds and the powerful bodies of the Rapa Nui people. The system of walking the statues worked beautifully for a long time, but human nature is a complicated thing. Slowly, over many generations, something inside the society began to change. The carving of the moai shifted from a religious practice into a dangerous competition. As the population of the island grew, the island was divided into different tribes and villages. Each tribe had its own chief. The chiefs wanted to show off their power. They wanted to prove that their tribe was the strongest and the richest. And how did they prove this? By building bigger and bigger moai. It was no longer just about honoring the ancestors. It became a game of pride. One village would build a statue 20 feet tall. The next village would see it and decide to build one 30 feet tall. "My statue is bigger than yours," they would say. "My tribe has more power." This obsession became completely out of control. The statues grew massive. Some of the later statues were so heavy that walking them became incredibly difficult. They needed new ways to move them. They began to cut down the tall palm trees of the island to use as wooden rollers and sleds. They needed more ropes, so they stripped the bark off the trees. They needed more food to feed the hundreds of men who were carving and moving these giant rocks. The entire society was focused on one single goal: building the biggest stone face. They stopped looking at the environment around them. They were so busy looking up at the giant stone faces that they did not notice what was happening to the ground beneath their feet. Their faith had turned into a fatal obsession. Their pride was slowly blinding them to the reality of their island. Think about a bank account, my friends. If you keep taking money out and never put any money in, eventually your account will be completely empty. The people of Rapa Nui were doing this to their island. They were taking, and taking from nature, without giving anything back. To move the massive moai, they cut down the beautiful forests. They cut down trees to build bigger canoes. They cut down trees to make fires to keep warm. Because the island was small, the forests could not grow back fast enough. Year after year, the green paradise slowly disappeared. Imagine the day the very last tree on the island was cut down. It is a chilling thought. Did the person who swung the axe know what they were doing? Did they know they were sealing the fate of their entire civilization? Probably not. They probably just needed the wood for one more statue. But when the trees were gone, a terrible chain reaction began. Without the roots of the trees to hold the dirt in place, the rich, dark soil was washed away by the heavy rain. The land became dry and dusty. The crops failed. The sweet potatoes and bananas stopped growing. Worse still, without tall trees, they could no longer build the wooden canoes. The canoes were their only way to catch the big fish and dolphins in the deep ocean. Now they were trapped on the island. They could not leave, and they could not get food from the sea. The birds, which used the trees for nests, all flew away or were eaten. The beautiful, loud songs of the birds disappeared. The island, which was once a noisy, green paradise, became a silent, brown desert. The people had destroyed the very thing that kept them alive. They had reached the point of no return. With the trees gone and the food running out, the golden age of Rapa Nui came to a violent and painful end. Hunger is a terrible thing. It changes people. It makes good people do desperate things. As the crops failed and the fish vanished, the people of the island began to starve. The happy, united family of Rapa Nui broke apart. The different tribes turned against each other. The island descended into war and chaos. Neighbors fought neighbors over tiny scraps of food. The safe paradise became a nightmare of violence and fear. People hid in dark caves to survive. During this dark time, the people lost their faith. They looked up at the giant stone moai they had worked so hard to build. "We built you," they cried. "We sacrificed our island for you. Why aren't you protecting us? Where is your magic power?" The statues, of course, remained silent. In their anger and total despair, the tribes began to attack the statues of their enemies. If you wanted to destroy the spirit of an enemy tribe, you pushed over their moai. They used ropes and rocks to pull the giant stone faces crashing down to the ground. When a statue fell, its face hit the earth. The nose would break. The eyes, made of white coral, would shatter into pieces. It was the ultimate insult. Over a few short years, almost every single standing moai on the island was violently pushed over. The symbols of their pride, their faith, and their ancestors were ruined. The gods had fallen. The sound of carving was replaced by the sound of crying and fighting. The incredible civilization that had built the walking giants had completely collapsed under the weight of its own mistakes. Now let us jump forward in time. The year is 1722. A Dutch explorer named Jacob Roggeveen is sailing his large wooden ship across the Pacific Ocean. He is looking for new lands to claim for Europe. It is a Sunday morning, a very special Sunday in the Christian religion. It is Easter Sunday. Roggeveen is standing on the deck of his ship, looking through his brass telescope. Suddenly, he sees land in the distance. He is excited. He expects to find what European explorers always hoped to find, a lush, tropical island filled with rich spices, tall forests, and gold. But as his ship sails closer, Roggeveen is confused. He lowers his telescope and rubs his eyes. The island is entirely brown and yellow. There are no forests. There are no tall trees anywhere. It looks like a barren wasteland. And yet, scattered along the shore, he sees the impossible. He sees massive stone giants lying in the dirt. He sees the fallen moai. When Roggeveen and his men row their small boats to the beach, they are shocked by what they find. They find a small group of poor, hungry people wearing simple clothes. Their bodies are thin, and their eyes are tired. Roggeveen cannot understand it. How could these poor, struggling people have built these magnificent, giant statues? He writes in his journal about the strange, sad island. Because he discovered it on Easter Sunday, he names it Easter Island. To the rest of the world, the island became a mystery. It looked like a ghost island, a place haunted by the ruins of a forgotten greatness. The European explorers did not know the whole story. They only saw the tragic ending. They saw the eerie silence that we talked about at the very beginning of our journey today. My friends, the story of Rapa Nui is not just an interesting history lesson. It is not just a mystery about moving heavy stones. It is a powerful, heartbreaking mirror. When we look deeply into the story of Easter Island, we are actually looking at ourselves. Think about it. Rapa Nui was an isolated island floating in the vast ocean. Its people depended entirely on the resources they had. Once the trees were gone, there was nowhere else to go. They could not escape. Now think about our planet, Earth. Earth is just like an island. We are a tiny, fragile island floating in the vast, empty ocean of space. Like the people of Rapa Nui, we share this beautiful home. And just like them, we are using our resources very quickly. We are cutting down our forests, we are polluting our oceans, and we are changing our climate. We are so busy building our modern moai, our giant skyscrapers, our fast cars, our endless businesses, that we sometimes forget to look at the ground beneath our feet. We sometimes forget that our resources have a limit. The fallen giants of Easter Island are trying to tell us a secret. They are a warning carved in stone. They are whispering across time, saying, "Be careful. Protect your home. Do not let your pride destroy your paradise, because there are no other islands for you to escape to." We have the power to choose a different ending. We can choose balance. We can choose to be kind to our earth and to each other. Thank you for walking with me through this incredible story today. I hope it gives you something important to think about. Until next time, take care of yourselves and keep learning. Thank you for listening to English Mindcast.